What's going on, everybody? Anon here, and I'm gonna do a little bit of a more detailed video tonight. But it's gonna be really, really boring. So, this isn't your normal Magic Pokemon video. This is about Alliance Distributors. Um, so this is right in my professional wheelhouse on the M&A side. I've acquired and rejected multiple companies that have gone through the Chapter 11 process. So, I have a reasonable amount of experience with this. And I kind of want to talk through this because I know Rudy did a video, he touched on it. Um, but he has a little bit of a different skill set. So I want to talk through just the general process here, the general M&A process, and what the notice from Hasbro looks like, because I've seen this 100 times in the construction industry. Now, whether it's AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, you know, some municipality, some you know, Kiewit, um, Wanzik, Maztec, whomever. It's all kind of the same process. So, Diamond Comic Distributors, and I'm doing some of this off the top of my head. I read through all the court documents because we I I took a look at it, and there wasn't enough time to get in the data room and put together um, a proposal. Just given the process once you're in Chapter 11 in your auction, it's a very tight process unless the court extends it. And if you're not in the process, they generally don't let you in the process. They just want to get it all said and done. And I believe J.P. Morgan is the impaired creditor on this. And generally speaking, lenders are not loan to own. They just want to get out of these as quickly as they can with as much money as they can. Inadvertently, always make bonehead decisions, which cost them money, at least in my experience. Um, but that's why they're bankers and they don't run businesses for a living. So, um, off the top of my head, Diamond Comic Distributors, they have 7 or 8 different entities, and the comic business itself is an absolute dumpster fire at this point, and it has been for 15 or 20 years. Um, I don't want to talk about the European assets because I don't know those as well. I know they have a UK distribution branch, but I want to talk about Alliance because as a business that sells Magic the Gathering Pokemon cards, Alliance is one of our customers, and I quite honestly like them quite a bit. I think they're a pleasant group to work with. Um, Diamond filed Chapter 11 in January. It was one of those things that was inevitable. I'm sure at some point they just outtake their coverage with their leverage on business. So they went through Chapter 11 restructuring. So what happens is the impaired creditor, they basically hand the entire business per se over to the court. The court will say, hey, you guys can operate in ordinary course. You can pay payroll, payables, receivables, anything outside of that, any distributions, dividends, capital investments have to go through me because I have to make sure that the decisions for the business aren't going to impair the creditor. In this case, I believe it was JP Morgan Chase. Um, if it's not, it's one of those big banks. So, whatever. So from that point, there was a stalking horse bid. And what that basically means is they went into bankruptcy with a bid from Universal out of Canada. What you can do is you can petition the court that this is the bid, this is the best bid. They'll fast track the Chapter 11 process. It's generally called a 363 restructuring. In this case, it didn't work. I don't know why. I didn't look at the details. Quite honestly, I don't care about the details. But the court decided, or the creditor pushed for an open process that was led by Raymond James. I know those guys a little bit. I don't know the restructuring group that well. I know some of the M&A guys in some of the other industries. So they basically did a live go shop, for a couple months. And the bids were due. It was a pretty quick turnaround. I think the initial bankruptcy filing was in January. They started the go shop in February, and they wanted bids done by the end of March, which is a super tight timeline. And generally things like this, you don't have a whole lot of time to do diligence. So, the main things you want to hit on, you want to take a look at the balance sheet, make sure the assets are real. The liabilities don't really matter because you're getting a clean balance sheet. The bank's getting impaired. Certain creditors, you can reject certain payables, leases, things like that. But the main things are are the contracts that you have in place with your customers that are actually the profitable part of business, do they exist? Are they long term? And generally, you're going to have, you know, two conditions to close. First of which is, you're going to have no financing, no financing contingency, so you can actually close the deal. And the second is no material adverse change in the business, which means I haven't lost a fucking customer. So what's interesting is this alliance group or whatever that placed their bid. I think it was their name. Is clearly a holding company. Generally speaking, when you're doing an asset purchase, you create a shell LLC to acquire the assets, and then you can make it whatever you want, change it to whatever name you want. Um, the stalking horse bid was like 40 million bucks, and it's 39 and change, and then there's like a $7 million breakup fee or something like that. But these guys came in and they did the scumbag private equity playbook that happens in every process in a competitive market. People look at what they would pay for it. They add 50, 60, 70% on. They try to get exclusivity. And once they do, they start to overturn rocks, look for warts, and whittle the price down. So these guys came in at like $89 million. And I think the minimum bid was like 42, plus you had to cover the breakup fee, which was like another 7 or 7.5, if I recall correctly. They came in at like $90 million, $89 million. So with a bid that was that far apart from the stalking horse, either they they felt the footsteps of a lot of groups looking at this, which could have been the case. But generally speaking, there's going to be communication with Raymond James off the record, or whomever the broker is, just to tell you if you're in the game, if you're not in the game. Because at the end of the day, Raymond James doesn't get paid unless the business sells. So it's in their best interest to get a deal done. You know, yes, they have a theoretical fiduciary obligation to maximize the sale price. But again, if the deal falls apart and it's not real, they work. I mean, in this case, they're going to get paid by bankruptcy court, but um, in a normal course, they'd have a small retainer, but the success fee is the big piece of that. So these guys came in at over 2 times what the publicly published purchase price was, or the bid was, for the stalking horse, which was Universal out of Canada. And even the purchase agreement was filed with the court. So everything was like open kimono. Like, you knew exactly what was going on. So these guys clearly overbid. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they came in and they tried to whittle down the process, probably tried to run the clock on this thing, because this thing blew up literally the day it was supposed to close. And remember the little point I said about the only thing that matters other than being able to close a deal is making sure there's no material adverse effect on the business. They're going to call Pokemon. They're going to call Bandai. And they're going to call Magic the Gathering. They may call a couple other customers. And they're going to make 100% sure that that contract is in place. Now, from what I've read, the Wizards of the Coast and Alliance contract expired December 2024. Now, it is very common for those contracts to have a 1-year renewal with no notice either way. It looks like in this instance, WotC, Hasbro, whomever you want to call it, extended them for 90 or 120 days, which is ordinary course. If I'm Hasbro and I have 5 distributors, and I see one of whom is struggling, they're going through bankruptcy process, I'm going to notice them. I'm going to give them a period, and I'm going to sit back and wait and make sure that I don't get fucked. Because ultimately, if Alliance says, you know what, we're going to shut down and liquidate, Hasbro's taking the chin, because now all of a sudden you have 10, 15% of their volume that they can't move. They're either going straight to Amazon, they're going to MJ Holdings, they're going to Excel, or they're going to the other distributors who they may or may not have the capacity to move all of the products. And let's be honest, even though some of the allocations are pretty heavy, you think any of these guys want to move more play boxes? No fucking way. There's only so much junk that they can cram down people's throats until enough is enough. So you kind of have to spread everything out. And with that alliance relationship being 25 plus years or whatever, there's a lot of people that have used Alliance for a long amount of time. And I know, Some people don't speak kindly about them. I've had nothing but great experiences with them, quite honestly. You know, Rep's a good dude. Rep's boss is a good dude. They're always a little bit later to the party, but I think that's because they get the product last because they've been, financially challenged for a while. It's the the small dog at the bowl, if you will. Just not because of that business, but because of the rest of the business. So getting back to this, there's a 100% chance that these guys knew that that contract expired because the first thing they're going to do is they're going to read the fucking contract. You're not going to go in and you're not going to spend ten or hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal fees and diligence. I'm sure they had a third party in here digging through the books, given the condensed time frame, and not read the fucking Hasbro contract or not read the Pokemon contract. Like the fact that they filed a lawsuit for fraudulent conveyance is the most asinine thing of all time. If anything, if they didn't ask that question, they deserve everything they get because it is the most professionally incompetent thing I've ever seen in the M&A world. So I think what they did, they knew that was there. They probably didn't say anything about it. They went through their work, and when they tried to cut the purchase price, they were told no. So they're like, you know what? We're going to call it off. We're going to fucking sue you because it's the oldest scumbag private equity move in the books. And I don't know who the group is that was looking to buy them. I'm sure I could find it if I did some research, but quite honestly, I don't really give a shit. This is just a topic I figured I'd talk to the, the 115 people that are interested in it, and everybody else is going to be like, oh, no destined rivals, no prismatic evolutions. Click next. So, those guys are out. So now it goes back to Universal, and Universal's in an interesting situation because I think I read somewhere where there was questions about the viability of their financing. So whether they can actually close or not, I don't know that for sure. So, don't fucking sue me. But they have a prime opportunity to cut the purchase price to whatever they want because now the bankruptcy court they don't have another option. Because everybody else would have walked away. They would have stopped doing work on it, and they would have been like, you know what, fuck this. It's not worth our time. Nobody's going to re-engage given a 2-week turnaround. So now you have Universal. You're backed into a corner. So they can effectively adjust the price to whatever they want to and cram this down JP Morgan's throat. And they're going to get a great deal on it. Now, I'm not sure that their folks on the M&A front understand that. They're Canadians. They could just be nice people where it's like, oh yeah, I like this business. I like comic books and stuff like that, and toys from China that now cost me 125% more. So yeah, we'll pay the 39 million we bid originally. Or they could be like, you know what, you lost the contract, you don't have another choice. Now we're going to pay 12.5. Go fuck yourself. That's probably what they should do because again, you had an offer, whether you thought it was reasonable or not. If you're Raymond James, you damn well knew that contract was in question because, again, you have a fiduciary obligation to ask these questions and know the answers ahead of time. I guarantee you disclosed it. Nobody's going to hold that information back because nobody in their right mind is going to assume somebody's going to buck up $50 million and not ask that question. That would be insanity. So, A, this lawsuit by the group that overbid, is bullshit. But it's going to be interesting because this Canadian group can effectively cut their price to whatever they want to. And the court's going to have to take it because they don't have another option. And, you may not think it matters, but there is a creditor, and I believe it's JP Morgan, who they're funding payroll and they're funding cash burn and losses every single week until they hand the asset to new hands where they have a new line of credit, they have new equity financing, and they're just sitting there and they're draw a line in the sand and say, you know what, we're going to start fresh. We're going to take a look at the business. We're going to move forward. And if we go backwards a little bit ahead of time, it is what it is. But you have not just the underlying business that's still bleeding cash. There's probably the entire corporate shell that's still getting paid and just, milking the shit out of the business. I mean, I've seen a couple businesses go bankrupt and the execs, when they know it's going south, they just go straight scumbag and they steal every dime they can from the company because they know it's going to end soon. They don't give a shit. There's no accountability at all. So that's where we're at. I really wish Alliance the best. I hope they get through this. Quite honestly, I hope the bidder pays the least amount possible because I'd like them to have a perfectly healthy balance sheet where they can, kind of right the ship, move on, fix everything. If the management team has to be adjusted, adjust the management team. If it doesn't, don't. But it's going to be super interesting to see what happens. So anyway, I wanted to talk through this because all of these headlines are bullshit. You know, group bailing on bid because of fraudulent conveyance. It's all bullshit. This was all a preconceived plan to cut the price because they way overbid to get in the door to get exclusivity from the bankruptcy court, and they knew damn well they were going to cut the price. They knew they had to cut it to $40 million, and that was that. But if they don't bid materially over the existing bid, the court's never going to give them the bid. They're never going to give them exclusivity. So, these the unfortunate thing is the people that work at Alliance, and there's a lot of great people that I know there. Yeah, they're stuck in the middle of this shit show, and it's a bank who's incompetent. It's a court that's financially retarded, quite honestly, because every lawyer, every judge I've ever met has been financially challenged when it comes to this stuff. You have a scumbag private equity group trying to overbid and now threatening to sue everybody to try to shoehorn their way, and then we have this Canadian company, which hopefully they do the right thing and they haircut the shit out of this, and say, hey, look, this is our price where we're going to walk, because you're going to get the bid because they don't have another option. And again, I want to see Alliance sold for as little as possible because I want them to have the least amount of debt going forward, being able to grow and expand. And quite honestly, give me a call at an on and say, hey, look, we want to give you two pallets of every Magic set, every Pokemon set, and let's go to work. Yeah, not likely, but anyway, guys, hopefully this was educational. Hopefully you didn't fall asleep through this, but anyway, a little bit more in depth. Subscribe to the video, join the Discord. I think we have Destined Rivals. We're gonna set our pre-orders up starting tonight for premium. That won't be public, so our public won't be, at least for another week. Then we have Final Fantasy coming, and we actually have Flesh and Blood High Seas. We'll see what we get. But we should have a decent amount. So anyway, guys, enjoy your Saturday night. Hopefully you've paid attention through the whole thing, got a little bit of an education. If you have any questions, post them in the comment section. This shit's fun for me. So, all right, guys, have a good night.